welcome to Virginia's Views and Vibes. I'm your host, Ginny Gardner, and this evening, our special friend to Virginia's Views and Vibes, and my friend, our favorite psychic medium, Nancy Garber. Thank you, Nancy, for joining us tonight. This is a special show because you now are using your master's degree in history to do some psychic mediumship.
Yeah, actually, my master's degree is in counseling psychology.
Oh.
Yeah, so that way I don't have to be as smart in history. It's just, it's just a minor in history that I have when I graduated school. I have so many degrees in different things, it's ridiculous, but I am definitely a history enthusiast, but my master's is in counseling psychology, and then I trained for about 3 years in England to get my certificate as a medium from the Arthur Findlay College in London, well, outside of London in England.
I have to ask you, when you were doing psychology and you did it for emotionally help,
yeah,
did you ever have any voices of spirit as you were counseling some of the people?
Well, this is definitely you know, a little offshoot, but
yeah,
I didn't know I was a medium then, okay? But I was working inpatient psychiatry at Newton Wellesley Hospital, and I actually knew one time a patient looked really fine, a young girl, and I knew she shouldn't go out on pass. I kept getting, do not let her go out on pass. And I said to the doctor, who always believed me because I had these vibes I used to tell him about, and I said to him, don't let her go. So he went into a room, and we said, I'm sorry, you know, he said, I'm going to take away your pass. And she just burst into tears. She said, how did you know? Because I was going to kill myself as soon as I got outside. So,
oh my God.
And I also seemed to be able to, when patients were psychotic and they weren't eating, I was sort of able to understand what they wanted to eat and what they would eat, and people would start eating that hadn't eaten, so it was a little bit weird. But I didn't know then I was a medium. And so then, of course, people have seen me doing my mediumship, both here and on Dedham TV, and Dedham TV comes here, and this show goes to Dedham. So I'm in both places a lot. It goes to other cities as well. And so I have my mediumship, my show, which is Psychic Voices, and then because I am a huge history enthusiast from the Revolutionary War, I now have a history show called Voices Past and Present because,
wow.
Yeah, because it's the 250th anniversary coming up of Concord and Lexington and Bunker Hill. So in April 1775 is, you know, Concord and Lexington, and June is Bunker Hill. And it's the 250th
wow.
anniversary. They're doing so many things in the state. It's going to be a really big deal coming up. So I just decided, why not talk about the Revolutionary War up until maybe next year, 1776, when they signed, you know, the Declaration of Independence, and just go up to that. And so, yeah, because people ask, well, you're a medium, what are you doing? So I don't want to be typecast, so I do have other interests, and so one of them is a big, always been super big enthusiast into the Revolutionary War. But the funny thing is, Jenny, so I've been doing some thinking because I've gone to a lot of battlefields, not only Revolutionary, but Civil War battlefields, and I've always had sensing, I've always sensed spirits around the different places, not all the time, but on certain occasions. And so even though I'm talking about history, history and spirit kind of go hand in hand, because even when I'm talking to people's relatives, it's history already. You know, they're not here in the physical anymore. So, and just going back a little bit further, the spirits of people from the different wars. So, you know, it kind of does blend in a weird sort of way.
Mm. Let me ask you this. When you go to, I know you said you were down in was it New York? Where did you go?
Okay, so I've been doing some actual visiting of places, and of course, you know, the one that's so close by, Concord and Lexington.
Yes. Yeah.
A few years ago, they asked me to do a show, and I did it for Dedham TV. Maybe we can find it in the archives. And I walked around the Colonial Inn in Concord, which is actually only a half a mile from the North Bridge, and where the battle was, where they met the British as they were retreating, heading back to Boston. And I actually was able to feel different parts, and I didn't know. I purposely don't want to find out anything
Right.
about the place, but they said every place that I had felt some activity is where they had phenomena. And
Now-
they actually, you know, I'm sorry.
No, no, no. Was it? Were you at the cemetery? Were you at the bridge or walking the road? Where
No,
was it?
I was actually in the Colonial Inn,
You were in
and
the
that's
inn.
where I did it. And the interesting thing is, you know, checking into the history after the fact, that there was a doctor that owned the property. I think it actually was built in 1817. I'm looking to see in my notes. I'm sorry, 1716. I'm a little dyslexic. So 1716, 1800's a little far off, but 1716. That's when the property was built, and a doctor owned it at the time of the battle, and so they brought a lot of the wounded soldiers to the Colonial Inn, which had a different name at that point, but same property, and they say that they did the surgery in room 24 because people have all sorts of physical phenomena that stay there, and they used room 27 as the morgue. And when I read it, they said, if you're brave enough to stay in room 27, good luck, because there's so much that happens in 24 that 27 is really difficult, apparently. Because people, I just wrote down little notes just to, you know,
Yeah.
at this age I need notes. So, so they say that lights and TVs go off and on, and they see apparitions in the mirrors. They just see apparitions. There's actually a woman they see as well that was a nurse that is running through the corridors. So
Oh
I
my
always
gosh.
wanted to stay there, but I have to be a little bit careful because having them know, they seem to know that I'm aware of them. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm really happy speaking to people's relatives, but I mean, you know, if they need to say something, you know, okay, but I don't want a whole collection of, you know, soldiers
Well,
follow
for the
me home.
record, I don't want to stay there. I have no desire. Do workers and waiters and waitresses actually see or feel the
Yeah, they
spirit?
do.
They do.
They do. Yeah, oftentimes, even if it's not related to a war, oftentimes I know I did a show for the educational channel on Channel 2, WGBH, and that was for the Inn in Ashland.
Yes,
And-
I've heard it. Talk a little bit about that. I've heard of
That is very
a
spirit
sad
active.
story,
And
too.
I'll just say this. I remember they said that once during one of my shows, people were in the bar and someone said, "Oh, I don't believe in the spirit," and two glasses clinked together and broke in their
Oh
hands.
my gosh.
And also someone asked the question, which I thought was very funny, and they said, "Why should we tip?" And as soon as the person said that, because they were paying for the whole evening,
Right.
you know, and the lights went out. No one had put out the lights. Everyone started laughing, and about 2 minutes later, the lights came on, and no one had done anything.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Maybe my producer knows. What's the one? I thought it was Ashland, where a little girl was hit
Yeah.
by a train. Is that
Yep,
the
they
same
see-
one?
Public House.
What is it?
Collins Public House.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
John Stone. Yeah, his name was John Stone. And there's a little girl. They actually found her doll and her shoes put away in the attic.
Really?
Yeah. But I want to get back because I know we don't have a lot of time in the show, and I just want to go over some
Sure.
of these things because I have a lot to say, and I'm always talking a lot, so I should just move on. But, you know, the battle sites, the Civil War is loaded. You know, you talk about Gettysburg, there's so many shows and books on ghosts of Gettysburg. People that are really reputable, you know, professors and you know, people that are not really into, you know, talking about spirit. And there's so much in all the Civil War battlefields. It seems as maybe as war got worse, you know, the horrific experiences that people have just sort of stayed there, which I'll get into at the end, which is real important why spirit is still there. But I just wanted to talk very briefly because I intend to get to most of these battlefields, but I am down by in Virginia. That was the last big battle. That was Yorktown with General Cornwallis. And there was a house, and I'm just going to look down at the name. Of course, I can't find it. But there was a particular house where, yeah, I know I have it here. Anyway, the Nelson House. And not only is it haunted from the Revolutionary War. It's haunted from the Civil War. There was action in both places. And the people from the town ran into caves because they were so frightened from the shelling. Yeah. And the caves, to this day, people can hear screaming coming out of it. So I don't know whether soldiers were there, but the people that lived in the town were there. So it's that every time you get near a battlefield, most likely there's something that's going to happen, you know, where you feel a presence. At least I do anyway. But one of the battles that was also in the South, so what happened is the British just decided it was a stalemate up north. They thought if they went south towards the middle of the end of the war, they had enough loyalists in the South to actually participate and be on their side. They were a little bit mistaken with that. They had some, but there were still patriots that were true to the cause. And so there was a pretty horrific battle at a place called Guilford Courthouse, and it took place in March 15th, 1781, and it's in Greensboro, North Carolina, and it was really bloody. It was the first time the British soldiers really got in disarray, because 1,100 colonial soldiers, Continentals, shot at the British at the same time, which had never happened before. And there was total chaos, and Cornwallis, who led the British, actually got grape shot, put it in, and thought that he could kill, but he wound up killing some of his own men. It was just total chaos. They wound up having hand-to-hand contact with swords, and it was really bloody. And to this day, what they're talking about is the park rangers, people, so it's people that are reputable, not, people that are just saying, oh, I see spirit, Right. It's not saying they don't, but actually the park rangers see it as well. And there's a walking trail, and what they said is all the people well, not all, but the people that do experience it, they hear shots, so they hear cannon fire, they hear guns going off, the muskets, they smell the residue of guns. Oh, they actually, it's kind of gross, but they smell the dead bodies. And they said, they've seen Continental soldiers hiding behind trees and trying to stand their ground. And some people have even seen Hessian soldiers, were the German soldiers that the British hired to help fight during the Revolutionary War. And it was so chaotic that at the end, even though they had stopped, there were still sections of the battlefield that didn't even know the other battlefield had stopped. In other words, they didn't even know it was over. It went on for a really long time. So from these battles that have taken place over a lengthy time that are very bloody, that's when you get the most, it seems, most accounts of psychic happenings, so to speak.
I was going to say, when you're a psychic medium, so this, you're in tuned, but for someone that goes just sort of to look at history, see the places that we talk about, why do you think some people get a message where others don't? Is it because they don't believe? Is it because, in my case, I'm learning the history and trying to absorb every piece of it? Is there, I guess, what does it?
It's why someone's a medium, someone isn't.
Yeah.
There are a lot more people that, if they were open and learned, they say it's like a psychic muscle, that the more you develop it, you're able to get stuff. Everyone is psychic, but not everyone is a medium.
Okay.
And truly, for me to be at these places is not, I want to know the history, but I don't want all the, should I say, the horror that goes with it. Right. Because I'm going to head back from the south to the north, because last week they just had their anniversary at Saratoga Battlefield, and there were 2 separate battles. People were encamped there for 3 weeks, and I went to see all the different encampments. And the first battle took place in September 19th, the second one October 7th in 1777. And that is the first time, because when I went to Concord and Lexington, I didn't feel a whole lot, to be honest.
Okay.
Well, actually, just Lexington Battlefield, but I didn't feel much of anything. But I was overwhelmed, and when I went to Saratoga, and to the point where I actually heard someone tell me what I was coming up to. They have this path where you get in a car. It's about a I don't know, 10-mile path, 8-mile, and you drive from point to point where the different battles took
Right.
place in the different,
Yeah.
you know, because there were 2 battles, and they had the camp followers, the women, because the women went oftentimes with the husbands that were fighting, and you know, they had children there. I mean,
Oh
it
my
was
God.
pretty horrific, and I was really surprised to see how close the battle was to where the families were. So there was a lot of horror that went on, and I started to hear someone tell me what was some soldier, I believe Continental, that was telling me what was coming up next, because they said to me, oh, this isn't our camp. And then I said, well, I got out to look and it was a British camp. So I was assuming it was a Continental. But then he started showing me some really horrible images, and he said, this is what happened to my brother. I don't know if it was actually a brother or a brother in arms, but it was a pretty horrific sight.
Oh, wow.
And it really bothered me. It was last summer when it was really hot, and I think it was July, where it was just boiling for days. It was about 105 on the battlefield, and I thought I was going to croak. It was just so hot. So I thought maybe I'm getting delusional, but it was so vivid.
Yeah.
And I kept hearing this. I'm like, wow. So as soon as I got home, I looked up to see if there was any spirit activity, because I was actually working in New Jersey as a medium, and I went from New York to, because I wanted to see the battlefield. Like I said, I'm into this stuff, so I went there, and I didn't have time because I was working. But when I got home, I was really surprised, because so many accounts of things that happened in Saratoga, people hearing voices, which is interesting. Same kind of thing, you know, hearing gunshots, seeing soldiers. But this one thing I thought was kind of interesting, that there was a woman who actually reported this, that a man came up to her, one of the soldiers who was wearing a 3-cornered hat, one of the tri-cornered hats, and approached her and told her that he believed one of his own people, one of his own men, had shot him.
Oh my
And as
gosh.
soon as he was able to share that, she said he was done with completed the story, and he vanished. Whether he had to say it and get it off his chest, no, psychic chest anyway.
Right.
You know, as to what happened. But they said, again, it's the same thing with park rangers, with people. They camp overnight. It's one thing after another. And there was actually a video on YouTube where they show this man is driving down one of the roads near the battlefield, and he stops. He sees someone, so he thought the person was crossing the street. And basically, it was an apparition that was by one of the cannons. And he was going around the cannon right near the side of the road to inspect something with the cannon. And the guy just stopped and watched. So it wasn't just me being overheated, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I have to ask you, you have a successful medium business, and you've done a lot. You've brought spirit back to, I know a friend of mine, her husband, and you bring kind of that to everything you do. You sort of answer people's questions of how their loved ones are and
Yeah.
are they connecting. And what has driven you to get involved in this part of it, the Revolutionary War, Civil War, and those kind of gruesome in a way
Well, I mean,
battles?
if you're into history,
What's your calling?
I mean, you grow up in New England. Obviously, you're going to be into the Revolutionary War.
Right.
But not everyone. I mean, most of my friends could care less. In fact, I was at lunch today, and my friend said to me, I hate that stuff. And I'm like, well, you know, okay. You know, what floats your boat? You know, it's, I don't know. I don't want to get into whether there's
Yeah.
reincarnation, but honestly, did maybe people live during that time? Who knows why you're attracted to a certain time frame? Because to be honest, I am not attracted to the Civil War. It's just when I've been down there, if there's something I'd like to check out the history. But I'm not really into the Civil War. I'm into the Revolutionary War, somewhat of the War of 1812, so mainly connected to the British. And then beyond that, of course, I know stuff about World War I and World War II, but
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
not
follow.
your-
No,
yeah.
no.
My guest that you had me interview, he came on to my show. What was his name?
Brandon Fischella.
Brandon, right. You've had him on your show.
Yeah.
And now you're doing a history show. Is that correct too?
Yeah,
So
Voices,
you're doing
yeah.
Voices from
Voices Past and Present.
okay,
Yeah.
and you're still doing your
Which will be on this show as well. And I'm having on a lot of British reenactors in their uniforms. They're bringing their swords. They're
Wow.
they're bringing a lot of their
Really?
muskets, and yeah, it's going to be. I have on officers. I have on general enlisted people. I'm going to be bringing in a lot of people. Someone who whose cousin actually saved Baltimore from the War of 1812. He's going to be coming next month, and yeah, just
Wow.
a lot.
How are
of,
you finding
I might
them?
get some history professors to talk about certain aspects, because no one seems to want to talk about Saratoga the way I do, and I also want to talk about Yorktown, and no one
Right.
seems to be into that. And plus, I'm also interested in the spy aspect that took place during the Revolutionary War. No one talks about that either. So if they don't,
talk a
I'll
little bit
eventually
about
talk
it.
about
yeah.
it.
You don't want to
But-
talk? Do you want to talk a little now, or just a?
No, I think what I want to do, maybe at the end if there's time, but I want to talk about maybe some of the reasons why the spirits do hang around.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay? So these are the things that I've heard other people. I have my own thoughts on it too.
Well, what's your thoughts first?
Kind of a lot of the same,
Really?
but I'll say
Okay.
here's one of the things that I don't think is great. When you keep doing reenactments, I don't know whether these people know it's a reenactment, or they thinking it's a
Okay.
battle that's going on and on and on. And maybe their souls can't leave because they think
Uh-huh.
they have to be stationed there.
Right.
Because one of the things that people think is, yeah, they don't, they're going to hold their position, and some of them want revenge, and they feel that sometimes they're offering support to fellow soldiers that are there, but it could be simply, some people think it's an emotional imprint. So they say it's like a tape that goes round and round, that stuff was so horrific that the emotional imprint is there, and I'm not sure how that works, but it's a little bit tricky. But the other thing that's tricky as well, because honestly, they say time is concurrent. I'm not a physicist, I can't get into that. But sometimes they say there's a rift in time where you actually see something because there's no past and there's no future. It's all happening at once. Please don't ask me. It gets me too cuckoo. But, I know yesterday I ate too much and I've gained a few pounds. So that's yesterday. Tomorrow's the diet. So I have to keep things in order. So I'm not like a
You're
big
beginning-
thinker in that direction.
You're kind of sounding like a female politician that I heard say something very similar. So let's go forward with
Well, I'm certainly not in politics, but anyway. But, I just want to say, there's one other thing I want to say is I know we're running out. Do you want to ask a quick question? Because I want to say something as well.
Well, I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on when of the show a little bit, and when you had when you opened with, you'd have a studio audience, and you'd get in the afternoon you would get messages, so that when people came to you, talk a little bit about that, because I've been to a few, because
Well,
we
now
love
we're getting
going.
into
It's fun.
mediumship.
But
Yeah, so I'm able to hear them in advance, no problem. It's actually more authentic, although sometimes when you have your notes, people think you're cheating, that you talk to someone beforehand, but I don't. They tell me what time they want me to tune in. Oops, I know we're running out of time. They just
Oh, my,
flashed 5
yeah,
minutes.
5 minutes. So go ahead.
I'm just going to say really quickly, I'm able to hear who's there. I don't even know who's there. There's an audience of 90, 100 people.
Oh, yeah,
I get
yeah.
first names, last names. I'm able to hear it from spirit. So if I can hear spirit of people's relatives, why couldn't I hear spirit that's around from the past? But I'm just going to say two things very
Sure,
quickly.
yeah.
One of the things where they say they hang out in the battlefields, I don't know, this is just conjecture, is that it's peaceful, it hasn't changed, and it's familiar to them. And some people think they just come and go. They may come in and they may visit, just like the way we visit a battlefield, they visit as well. But someone said something very interesting. They said, what if they went back to their families and saw that there was nothing for them there, that the wife gets remarried, they have a new dad, and it's upsetting to them. So they would go back to where it was familiar, where their friends are, where they understood, what happened, and where they could find peace, because the battlefields are pretty peaceful. So just to end it really quickly, I had a situation when I first started doing readings, I'll sum it up very quickly, where someone wanted a relative from way far back. I thought he meant his great-grandfather, and he said, no, way far back. And I said, well, I did see someone before that was Scottish and from Pennsylvania. And he said, that's my great whatever it was, who was Scottish, that lived in Pennsylvania. And I got all the details, the names of the kids and stuff. And then he said to me, but what's his name? And I remember taking a sip of my water, and I came back with, and I just forgot the name, oh my goodness. Wilhelm, yeah. I came back and I said, oh, I'm hearing Wilhelm, but like that wasn't a Scottish name. And the guy just was horrified, and I said, well, what? And he said, no, but that's the man she remarried. Wow. And so obviously, right there is an example of him being so upset he didn't give me his name. He gave me the name of the man she remarried, Wilhelm. Whether he was a Hessian soldier that stayed there, a lot of them did, or whether he was just had a German name, I don't know. Wow. But that made me think when I read this that maybe that's true, and they had nothing to go back to maybe, and so they just stayed there. But I would hope to think that they just come and go, that they visit, because if they are stuck there in that horror, it's not a good situation.
Yeah, I would like to go back and fall back on my religion, which is when you die, your soul goes to heaven. And I think that's what I'd like to believe, because that gives me a lot of comfort. But I think people look at death and spirit all different ways, and this is certainly another aspect of it. And you're going to be doing now 3 shows at Dedham.
No, 2 shows.
2 shows.
Psychic Voices, and also Voices Past and Present, which is the history. And they're coming here.
And they're coming to New TV.
They're coming to New TV.
So we'll be able to see them.
I mean, you know, Ginny, when I bring you people from Spirit, and I didn't know anything, but I've got names and things that no one would know.
Right.
They're always at peace, you know. I would like to think they are, but because they've been through this horrific environment, the situation, whether it is the tape or you're going into a time, you know, rift, I would hope that they're not there all the time. But really what I don't think is helpful, as much as I do like going to reenactments, I have to even think, does this help enhance, you know, the same memory over and over and keeping it fresh in their minds? It's just, I don't know.
Well, I think there's certainly lots to think about, because in actual fact, none of us really know.
No, we don't know. This is all, can't prove it.
Right.
You know?
My theory or your theory is all just what we believe. And I'd like to think that knowing every aspect of it is somewhat educating. And then when we see you in person at your show, or now with your new series, I think it is fun to learn, and you bring a whole different, and it's fun the way that you do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any answers to this, you know. I mean, do I want to actually talk to them and ask them why they're there? I don't know.
Not really?
Will I ever? I don't know, maybe at one point, but I don't want anyone, once one's talking, I don't know how many are going to want to talk to me.
Yeah.
So I like to keep my boundaries. I don't have good boundaries to begin with, but I like to, you know, just keep them, you know, it's okay, it's time to go.
Okay.
You go back where you want. I need to watch QVC or whatever. Watch my reality shows and go back to being me.
Being you and having fun. Well, thank you again, and look for Nancy on New TV, Dedham, and on YouTube. You can find my show on YouTube as well. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.